Hey everyone, Sarah here. Rewind Justice brings you revenge stories that will blow your mind. If you're ready, hit subscribe and let's go.
My father has always needed an audience. Not a family. An audience. People who would applaud his stories, nod at his opinions and confirm, again and again, that Gerald Harmon was a man of substance. A man who had built something. A man worth knowing. What he built specifically was a restaurant. Costello on Hargrove opened in 2003, the year I turned 11. I remember the night vividly. Dad in a charcoal blazer, Mom refilling wine glasses she hadn't poured, my Aunt Renee holding court near the hostess stand like she'd had something to do with any of it. The local newspaper ran a small feature. Dad framed it and hung it beside the bar where it still hangs today. I was there that night. I remember thinking the burgundy booths were beautiful. I remember thinking my father looked proud in a way I hadn't seen before. A real pride earned tangible. I wanted him to look at me like that someday. That wanting took a long time to let go of. Growing up in the Harmon house meant existing in a precise social hierarchy. My older brother, Daniel, was the heir apparent, the one who would carry the family name somewhere distinguished. My younger sister, Priya, was the favorite by temperament, effortlessly charming in the way Dad valued most. And then there was me, Nadia. The middle child who read too much, asked inconvenient questions, and showed zero interest in performing for whoever Dad had invited to Sunday dinner. I wasn't rebellious. I was simply, elsewhere in my head building things internally that I had no language for yet. The dismissals were small at first. An eye roll when I explained a project I was excited about. A quiet redirect when I tried to contribute to adult conversations. Nadia, go help your mother. Nadia, not now. Nadia, this is a grown-up discussion. By the time I was in high school I had learned to speak less. By college I had learned to disappear entirely when it suited me. What no one noticed because no one was paying attention to me, was that the disappearing had become productive. I graduated with a finance degree and a minor in real estate law. I took an entry-level position at a regional investment firm in Cincinnati, which bored me into excellence within 18 months. I learned the architecture of silent capital, how money could move through structures invisible to anyone not looking for them. I learned how shell companies held assets. I learned how anonymous benefactors worked, legally and strategically. I became very good at it. And then, in my second year of working at the firm, I got a call from my mother. Costello was in trouble. Dad hadn't said a word to me directly, he wouldn't have, but Mom explained it quietly, the way she delivered most difficult information in fragments over a long phone call. The restaurant's commercial mortgage had ballooned. The 2008 market had not been kind. A bad expansion decision in 2010 had left Dad with a second location that hemorrhaged money for 3 years before he shuttered it. The original Hargrove Street property, the flagship, the framed newspaper, the burgundy booths, was 60 days from foreclosure. I drove home the following weekend. Not to announce anything. Not to be thanked. I sat in the parking lot of Costello for 40 minutes, watching the dinner service through the window. Watched my father move between tables, shaking hands, laughing too loud, playing the host. He didn't know I was there. I drove to First National Bank of Cincinnati on Monday morning and had a conversation with a vice president I'd been introduced to through a colleague. The arrangement I set up was clean, legal, and completely anonymous. A private holding entity, Meridian Silent Trust, would assume the mortgage obligations on the Hargrove Street property. Payments would draft automatically. No name attached. No drama. No audience required. I was 26 years old. Dad never asked where the lifeline came from. I suspect he told himself the bank had restructured. I suspect he preferred not to know. What I know for certain is that Costello stayed open, the burgundy booth stayed full on weekend nights, and Gerald Harmon continued receiving applause from people who didn't understand the full picture. That was 7 years ago. The years between that arrangement and today were not years I spent waiting for credit. I moved from Cincinnati to Atlanta at 28, joining a mid-sized commercial real estate investment firm where I spent 3 years learning the full landscape of property capital. I was made a senior analyst at 29, a portfolio manager at 30, and left to launch my own consulting practice at 31. By 33, which is what I am now, Harmon Capital Advisory had 22 clients across 4 states, managed over $47 million in silent investment positions, and had been referenced in 2 regional business journals under my holding company name, Never Mine. I did not post about it. I did not mention it at holidays. I did not correct anyone. What I did do was continue funding the Hargrove Street mortgage at $18,400 per month, every month without interruption. Not because I needed to. Not because it was tax advantageous, though it was structured to be. But because somewhere underneath the discipline and the silence, I still wanted my father to have the thing he'd built. I was still in some quiet corner, the 11-year-old watching him through the restaurant window. The family, for their part, had developed their own narrative about me. It wasn't malicious exactly. It was simply the story they needed in order for their hierarchy to remain intact. Nadia was fine. Nadia had a job. Nadia was doing something with consulting, which sounded vague because she described it vaguely, which probably meant it wasn't very impressive. Daniel had become a district manager for a logistics chain, which sounded authoritative and gave him something concrete to say at family gatherings. Priya had married well. Her husband Marcus had a surgical practice, which gave her a status that required no further explanation. Me. I had Harmon Capital Advisory, 22 clients, and a portfolio of silent investments I had never once discussed over a single family dinner. I had learned early that silence was its own kind of power. My father had taught me that without meaning to. Every time he spoke over me, he confirmed that speaking louder was not the strategy. The strategy was positioning. The strategy was patience. The strategy was knowing something the room didn't know, and deciding exactly when, or whether, to use it. For 7 years I had chosen whether. Then came the graduation dinner. My cousin Tyler graduated from Ohio State with a business degree in May. It was the kind of achievement the family treated as a collective triumph, as though proximity to Tyler's diploma conferred distinction on everyone who shared his last name. A dinner was planned. Costello, naturally. Of course, Costello. Dad's restaurant, Dad's occasion, Dad presiding. I received the group text on a Tuesday afternoon while sitting in a client meeting. I glanced at it, finished my meeting, then read it properly. Family graduation dinner for Tyler. Saturday the 14th, 7 p.m. Costello. Adults only, keeping it intimate. Black tie optional. I typed back, I'll be there. Congratulations, Tyler. My reply sat in the thread for 45 minutes. Then Dad called. I almost didn't pick up. Something in my body already knew. Nadia. His voice had that particular register. The one that meant he had already decided something and was now performing. The courtesy of informing me. About Saturday. I got the text, Dad. 7 o'clock. Right. Listen. A pause that contained a whole architecture of condescension. Your Aunt Renee is bringing the Caldwells. You know Marcus's colleague Dr. Whitfield will be there with his wife. These are people with. It's a particular kind of evening. We want the energy to be right. I waited. You know how you can be, Nadia. You get quiet. Makes things awkward. Tyler deserves a night without complications. You're asking me not to come. I'm asking you to understand the situation. And if I said I didn't understand? Another pause. Longer this time. Your Aunt Renee agrees it's for the best. Daniel's going to make a toast and we don't want things going sideways. It's one evening. His voice softened into the register he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. It's not about you. It's never about me, I thought. Except when it is. Enjoy the evening, Dad, I said. Tell Tyler congratulations from me. I hung up and sat with it for a moment. Not the hurt. I had long since stopped being surprised by that particular flavor of it. What I sat with was something more specific. Something I had been aware of for 7 years and had never once acted on. The 14th was a Saturday. Tyler's graduation dinner. That afternoon I had a call with the senior partner at Aldridge Commercial Properties, who had been tracking the Hargrove Street corridor for 2 years. He'd asked me 3 times in the past 18 months whether I had any intelligence on the property at 4401 Hargrove, the building that housed Costello's dining room, kitchen, private event space, and the framed 2003 newspaper article. Each time I had said I didn't have anything useful for him. I sat in my office. I looked at my phone. Then I thought about the words your Aunt Renee agrees it's for the best, and I made a different decision. I did not act emotionally. That is important to understand. Every step I took in the following 72 hours was deliberate, documented, and executed with the same professional precision I would apply to any client matter. Thursday morning I called my attorney, James Okafor, who had been handling the Meridian Silent Trust structure since its inception. I explained that I wanted to initiate dissolution of the anonymous mortgage arrangement. He walked me through the formal steps. We prepared the notice documents that same afternoon. Thursday afternoon, I called First National Bank and spoke with the current relationship manager on the account, a woman named Patricia Chin who had inherited the file from the VP I'd originally worked with. I explained that the anonymous benefactor arrangement was ending. I confirmed the next automatic payment would not process. I asked that formal notice be sent to the borrower, Gerald Harmon, doing business as Costello Restaurant Group, on Saturday per standard protocol. Patricia asked if I'd like to be connected to the collections team. No, I said. Just send the standard notice. The timing doesn't need to be adjusted. I asked her one other question. What time did their customer service line typically reach business owners with urgent account matters on a Saturday evening? She said calls of that priority usually went out between 7 and 8 p.m. I thanked her and confirmed the instruction. Friday, I called my contact at Aldridge Commercial and told him I might have intelligence on the Hargrove Street property worth discussing the following week. He was pleased. I told him nothing further. Saturday morning, I sent Tyler a card with a check for $500 and a note that said, "Proud of you. The hard part starts now. That's where it gets interesting. Cousin Nadia." Then I made a reservation for dinner. Not at Costello. I booked a table at Hensley's, the restaurant 2 blocks from Costello that had been quietly better for years, where the lighting was warm and the noise level allowed for actual conversation. I invited my 2 closest friends and business partners, Simone and Derek, who had known about the trust arrangement since year 3 and had never once pressured me to act on it. "You're really doing this," Simone said when I told her. "I ended it Thursday," I said. "The dinner is just dinner." She gave me a look that said she didn't entirely believe that, and was also entirely supportive. We had a reservation for 7:30. Costello was 6 minutes from Hensley's on foot. I had not planned to walk past it. But Simone suggested we get a drink at the wine bar on Hargrove before dinner, and the route took us directly along the block. I saw the cars first. A line of them along the curb. Daniel's Audi, Marcus's Range Rover, Aunt Renee's silver Lexus. The restaurant windows glowed amber. Through the glass, I could make out the long table in the private dining room, the one Dad reserved for significant occasions. 12 people, maybe 14. Tyler at the head. Dad at the other end, already in performance mode, gesturing broadly at something. I did not slow my pace. I did not look long. Simone took my arm and we walked. Hensley's was exactly what I needed. Good wine, a quiet corner table, Derek making everyone laugh inside of 5 minutes. I ordered the salmon. Simone ordered the duck. We talked about a new client intake, about a property in Buckhead, about Derek's upcoming trip to Lisbon. I was present. I was genuinely enjoying myself. My phone was face up on the table, not because I was waiting, but because I had told Patricia Chin the call might require a callback authorization from me to provide routing details for the formal notice. At 7:52 p.m. my phone lit up. Not my phone. Dad's name. I looked at it for one full ring. Ew. Then I picked up. Dad. My voice was even. Warm even. Nadia. His voice was not even. It was tight. That specific tightness of a man who has just received information he cannot immediately process. I just got a call. From First National. About the restaurant. Hey, I said. They said the mortgage arrangement. There was some kind of, they said an anonymous entity has been covering the payments. For 7 years. Pause. 7 years, Nadia. I said nothing. They said the arrangement is ending. They said notice was issued today. His breath was audible. Do you know anything about this? I set down my fork. I looked at Simone, who was watching me with complete stillness. Dad, I said. Costello was 60 days from foreclosure in 2017. Silence. I set up the arrangement through Meridian Silent Trust. Every payment for 7 years. $18,400 a month. Kept my voice level. Not cold. Not triumphant. Simply factual. I ended the arrangement Thursday. The silence on his end was different now. It had texture to it. You, he stopped. That was you. Yes. For 7 years. Yes. I could hear the ambient noise of the restaurant in his background. The low hum of a dinner party that had no idea the ground had just shifted. I heard a chair scrape. I imagined him stepping away from the table from Tyler's graduation dinner, from the Caldwells and Dr. Whitfield and my Aunt Renee who had agreed it was for the best. Why are you doing this now? His voice had dropped. Why tonight? I'm not doing anything tonight, Dad. I made a business decision Thursday. The bank sent notice today on their standard schedule. I didn't time it. That was technically accurate. I had confirmed the timing would fall on Saturday. But I had not called the bank Saturday evening. I had not arranged anything beyond what was already in motion. The mortgage, he said. If the payments stop, the bank will reach out to you about options. You have some equity at this point. 7 years of payments on your behalf have reduced the principal considerably. How considerably? You'd need to speak with Patricia Chin at First National for the exact figures. She's very professional. She'll walk you through it. Another silence. I could hear him breathing. Then I heard Aunt Renee's voice in the background, muffled, questioning. Dad said something I couldn't make out. Then he came back. Nadia. His voice had changed again. Something had gone out of it. The performance register, the authority register. What was left was rawer than I expected. I didn't know. I know you didn't. I wouldn't have. He stopped again. Dad. I picked up my fork. Enjoy Tyler's dinner. We can talk next week. There's no emergency tonight. The formal notice is just that, a notice. You have time. You paid my mortgage for 7 years and didn't say a word. Costello mattered to you. That was enough reason. I heard him exhale. A long, quiet exhale that sounded nothing like Gerald Harmon usually sounded. I told you not to come tonight, he said. I know. Your Aunt Renee. Dad. My voice was still level. Still warm. It's okay. We'll talk next week. I ended the call. Simone and Derek were both looking at me. Simone's glass was halfway to her mouth and had been there for 2 minutes. Well, Derek said. Salmon's getting cold, I said and picked up my fork. But I knew it wasn't over. I knew, with the precision of someone who has studied how family systems work, that the call to me was only the first call. That inside Costello, at the long amberlit table, Gerald Harmon was returning to a dinner party that was about to become a very different kind of evening. I found out later, from my cousin Tyler who texted me the following morning with 17 question marks, exactly how the rest of the dinner unfolded. Dad returned to the table pale enough that Aunt Renee stopped mid-sentence. Daniel asked what was wrong. Dad sat down, picked up his wine glass and set it down without drinking. Marcus leaned over to ask a quiet question. Then Dad said in a voice that apparently carried further than he intended. Nadia has been paying the restaurant's mortgage for 7 years. Tyler told me the table went completely silent. Then Aunt Renee said, what do you mean paying the mortgage? And Dad said since 2017. Anonymous trust. Every month. I didn't know it was her. Daniel apparently said nothing for a very long time. Marcus, whose opinion of me had been shaped entirely by Priya's framing, reportedly looked at his wine glass with an expression Tyler described as a man reconsidering multiple things simultaneously. And Aunt Renee, who had agreed on the phone 3 days earlier that it was for the best that I not attend, reportedly excused herself from the table and did not return for 11 minutes. I heard from 4 family members before Sunday evening. The first was Daniel, who called Saturday night at 10:42. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail that began with "Hey so" and ended with "Call me back when you get a chance," which contained no acknowledgement of anything and was therefore not something I needed to respond to immediately. The second was Priya, who texted, "Marcus told me what happened at dinner. Can we talk?" I replied, "Of course. I'll call you this week." She sent a thumbs up, then 3 minutes later a heart, then nothing further. The third was Aunt Renee, which surprised me. She called Sunday morning at 9:15. I picked up. Nadia. Her voice was different than usual, stripped of its usual social lacquer. "I owe you an apology." I let the silence sit for a beat before I said, "Aunt Renee. What you did for your father, for that restaurant, I didn't know. None of us knew." And I said, she stopped. "I agreed that you shouldn't be there. I said it was for the best. You didn't have full information," I said. "That's not an excuse." "No," I agreed. "It isn't." Another pause. "Your father he's not handling it well. Not in a bad way. He's quiet. Your father is never quiet." "I know." He's been sitting in the kitchen since 6 this morning. Just sitting. She sounded genuinely unsettled. He asked me to call you. He doesn't know what to say to you himself yet. I looked out my window. Sunday morning in Atlanta. A mockingbird working through its repertoire in the magnolia by the parking lot. Tell him there's nothing he needs to say yet, I said. Tell him we'll talk when he's ready. And the mortgage? The restaurant? Tell him to call Patricia Chin at First National Monday morning. He has options. The principal has come down significantly. It's not the crisis it would have been in 2017. Aunt Renee was quiet for a moment. Then, why didn't you ever say anything? I thought about the honest answer, which had several layers. The top layer was simple, because he didn't need to know where it came from. He needed it to keep going. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, I think he needed to know it was you. Maybe, I said. But I wasn't going to hand him something he hadn't asked for. And now? Now he has the full picture, I said. What he does with it is up to him. The fourth call was Dad. Sunday afternoon, 4:12 p.m. He didn't open with performance this time. He didn't open with authority or explanation or the particular cadence he used when he was managing a situation. He just said my name. Nadia. Hi, Dad. A long pause. I called Patricia Chin this morning. Good. She walked me through the numbers. The trust paid down more than I. The position is different than I thought it was. That's good to hear. Nadia. His voice was doing something unfamiliar. Something effortful. I told you not to come to Tyler's dinner. Your Aunt Renee agreed. I made you feel like you didn't belong there. Pause. And while I was saying that to you, you had been keeping the lights on in my restaurant for 7 years. I didn't say anything. I let it sit. I don't know what to do with that, he said. You don't have to do anything with it right now, I said. I want to. His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. I want to figure out how to. I want to understand why I never. He stopped. Why I never looked at you properly. That sentence cost him something. I heard it cost him something. We have time, Dad, I said. We can start there. 3 weeks later I met my father for lunch. Not at Costello. His choice, he suggested Hensley's, which surprised me. He must have asked someone where I'd been the night of Tyler's dinner. He was already seated when I arrived. He stood when he saw me, which he had never done before, not once in my adult life, and for a moment we just looked at each other across the restaurant. He looked older than I expected, though he hadn't aged since I'd last seen him. It was more that he looked like a man no longer performing, which creates a different kind of tired. We talked for 2 hours. He asked me questions. Real ones. Not the performative interest of a man building toward his own story, but questions that required listening, that required staying in the answer long enough to hear it. He asked about Harmon Capital Advisory. He asked about Cincinnati, about what I'd seen in that first arrangement that had taught me how to structure it. He asked when I had known Costello was in trouble, and I told him the truth. That Mom had called, that I had sat in the parking lot for 40 minutes. That I had watched him through the window. He looked at the table when I said that. I didn't know you were there, he said. I know. You were watching me. I was deciding, I said. He nodded slowly. And you decided to, without saying anything. You didn't ask, I said. It wasn't an accusation. It was just true. He absorbed that. I should have asked, he said. I should have been asking. For years. We ordered coffee. We stayed past the lunch crowd. At one point he asked about the Aldridge inquiry. I had mentioned it because he needed to know there was interest in the property and he should take his next steps thoughtfully. He asked sharp questions about it, actually sharp, and I remembered that he had built something from nothing in 2003, that he had real instincts buried under 20 years of performing at his own dinner parties. Before we left, he put a hand briefly on my forearm. An awkward, careful gesture, the gesture of a man relearning a language. The graduation dinner, he said. I'd like to have another one. A proper one. With you there. Tyler would probably appreciate that, I said. I would appreciate it, he said. That's what I'm saying. I looked at him. Gerald Harmon, 63 years old, sitting in someone else's restaurant, saying something that cost him something. Hey, I said. Set the date. I'll be there. He nodded. Then, almost to himself, 7 years. 7 years, I confirmed. We walked out together. On the sidewalk he paused and looked down Hargrove Street toward Costello. Visible from here, the brick facade, the sign in the window, the burgundy light from inside. It's a good restaurant, I said. It is, he agreed. And then quietly, it's still there because of you. I put my hands in my pockets. I watched a couple walk into Costello through the front door. A regular Tuesday lunch, nothing significant, just two people about to sit in a burgundy booth and have a meal. It's still there because you built something worth keeping, I said. I just made sure the building stayed standing. He looked at me for a long moment. Then Gerald Harmon, who had always needed an audience, nodded once. Just to me, just for me, no one else watching. It was enough.